covered up by that shadow, because really Isaac serves as sort of a stepping stone to Jacob, his son. Even though these are the generations of Isaac, it really is, this is what follows after Isaac, and it focuses really on his son Jacob. But it does highlight a few things for us in the life of Isaac. And what it's fascinating is he serves as kind of this link between Abraham and Jacob as the promise gets passed from one generation to another. And I think it's quite true that most of us will live quite an ordinary life as a believer, right? We will have quite an ordinary life, and that's common. And Isaac is a good test case for us because it just shows that not everyone's life is meant to be this massive life, massive role, I guess you could say, in God's kingdom plans like Abraham has. And you might be saying, well, Isaac does have a massive kingdom role. He does, but in comparison to the others, he kind of falls into the background and doesn't get a lot of airtime. And yet, he has the same kind of promises. He he has some of the same kind of trials that other believers have had, and he has the same kind of provision that God gives, and you see the peace of God in his life as well. So it is a good paradigm for us of the ordinary life of the believer. If we could entitle this chapter, we would call it Like Father, Like Son. Like Father, Like Son. And we'll see that borne out as we see many of these parallels between Abraham's life with Isaac. Now, one more introductory note. Why is this chapter here? Not why is it in the Bible, but why is it placed where it is here? If you remember, we ended chapter 25, and what happened between Jacob and Esau? What do you remember? Yeah, the birthright, right? So you have the giving up. Esau sells his birthright. And then chapter 27, what do we have in chapter 27? You remember? I know, this is like, you're like, I haven't read that yet. That's in next week. Yeah, deceives and he steals the blessing, right? So end of 25, birthright taken. Chapter 27, blessing taken by Jacob. So then in between, you have chapter 26 is Isaac. So it's kind of sandwiched in the middle here between the birthright and the blessing. In fact, if you pulled 26 out, it would actually flow pretty nicely. You would have the taking of the birthright and then right into the taking of the blessing as they are adults. But then 26 comes in. And what's interesting is we're going to see, and I'm not reading it all in the beginning because it's kind of a long chapter. We'll read it as we go. But you're going to see that Isaac goes and he sojourns in Gerar, and he has kind of the same sister wife fib that Abraham has, and endangers his wife. You see these similarities, but one of the things you start to realize is this may not be in chronological order, because Abimelech doesn't know that Isaac and Rebekah are married, which would be kind of a hard thing to hide if you have two boys running around at this point. So some think that this happens prior to the boys, is sometime between the ages of 40 and 60 years old for Isaac. And that seems to be quite plausible. There are a number of things that take place that seem to fit before the time that the boys are born. And so it's almost sort of a flashback. It's almost like Moses is saying, all right, let me just take you back now. And like the screen goes, and then you take you back to a time in Isaac's life. You've been introduced to Isaac and his boys, and now it takes you back, and it's like 20 years earlier, and then you see what characterized Isaac's life. Before we kind of hand it off to Jacob and say goodbye to Isaac, what do we need to know about, or hand it off to Jacob? What do we learn about Isaac? So I think that's kind of what is happening here. It's this focus in between the battle for the birthright and the blessing, and it describes what it looks like to be in the line of Abraham and have the covenant promises. Now, that's why this is here, to show the continuity from one to the other, what it looks like to be in the line of promise. All right, a couple things to note. This is actually pretty cool. It doesn't always happen this cleanly, but this is a great time to stop and see how the structure works. It's almost indisputable. It's really cool to see. There are times when the author in Scripture will bracket material, he'll chunk material so that you know these are the breakdown of the chapter. And he does it in such an easy way for us, Moses. He does it by repeating words at the beginning and end of a section. So let me just show you. In chapter 26, verse 1, you have, now there was a famine in the land. Saying, for Yahweh has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. And then finally, in our final section, verse 23, we read, from there he went up to Beersheba. And then in verse 33, he called it Sheba, therefore the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. So Beersheba becomes the brackets there. So the author is intentionally bracketing, chunking these sections together by key words that would key you off to that. Now, on these scrolls, they didn't have, bold letters, or like indentation to say like, oh, this is the section. So what they would do is they would chunk it with these various word plays. It doesn't always happen like that, so you can't look for that in every chapter, but sometimes it does, and it's really beautiful. I mean, sometimes we just step back and go, wow, the scripture is very intricate and detailed, and Moses was not a dummy, right? He was a very careful writer as he structured his material. So that's really cool. And this is just a lesson in leading a Bible study or teaching, walking someone through a section. As you're thinking, like, how do I break this down and explain this? You want to look for things like this. How does the scripture break itself down? What are the logical breakpoints? And here is what we want to do. We want to match our points to the structure of the text. So, shocker, we have 4 points to look at for our passage this morning, okay? Because that's what you want to do. Good teaching of the Bible is meant to make the point of the message given match with what the point of the passage is, and even the structure of what the passage is. And so here we want to match the structure with